what is the Google Maps integration? So it's giving you guys the ability to create scenarios with a photorealistic model of the surroundings right from the get-go. So when you're creating your project, you have now the ability to select a map area. So basically, what it means is that now you have the ability for you to create a site that will have better references for the surroundings and for the buildings that exist in that area, right? So this is an example of New York. So we will create like a project today to show how this works. But just as you can see, is something that you can start working and creating your logistics planning, like putting equipment, doing traffic controls, all the interesting things about cmBuilder directly from the Google Maps model without having to import this from another application. Okay, so I'm gonna first go through the steps on how to use the platform, then this new tool. Then I'm gonna talk about what is the meaning of site conditions, which is a specific new feature inside of the Google Maps integration that is very important to understand, and then some considerations in the comparison with the previous method. Okay, so for everyone in the call that wants to start using this new feature, you need to request your admins to go into the integration page of your homepage and enable the Google Maps integration, right? So if this is not enabled on your company settings, integrations, if you don't turn this on over here or ask your admin to turn this on, you won't be able to create a project using Google Maps style. So this is a must, right? And once you turn this on, we just need to go and select the address and the size of the map. We will define that we're going to use the photorealistic 3D models and define a high quality area. I'm going to explain this in details in a second. Once we are inside of the scenario, we will adjust the display settings to show the elements and the surroundings the way that we want. And then we're going to define the site conditions. Okay. So before we get to the site conditions, let me go through the other steps. So basically, when you're here in your home page, if you turned on the application, the integration, sorry, you can now go into create a new project. And I'm going to do Olympics workshop test 1. And from here, we can select any address. So let's go to New York. I know that it's quite cold over there right now. So in here, you can still select what is going to be the size of your map. So you can, this is going to be your total working area. Okay, so the size of your map at this stage is your total working area, the areas that you can edit and do the work. But inside of this area, there are some considerations. So once I click over here to create the map, I will get to this view where this is going to take some time loading. We are working on improving these loading times, but for now, like it takes a little bit longer than the previous method because there is more data to be brought into the view at this stage. And from some locations, I've noticed that sometimes the initial viewpoint can be underground and depends on the elevation of the area and something like that. So sometimes this only happened once in one example that I found where like the view was like this and you just need to push this upwards, right? It shouldn't happen often, and we're probably going to fix that very soon. So now we have this additional, in the default option would be the photorealistic 3D from Google Maps, and this is the new option that we have, right? You still have the same previous options to choose from, topographic and flat and whatnot, but working today with the photorealistic one, we now in this page, we see what is the total workable area, this kind of like white line over here, and there is this new dashed line, blue line over here in the middle, which defines what is the area with the highest quality. So if you're working on a project that you want to bring in this and you want to show the surroundings for context, but you're going to work on a specific area, let's say over here where there's like some construction already happening, then you can change what is the high resolution area to by double clicking on that location. So this will take some time to reprocess that area and give you more details to it, right? So, and then once this finishes loading, that area has a better quality for the textures on the other parts. So you can change this at your own kind of like wheel over here, and you can make this high resolution area. You can change what is the size of it from 100 meters to 300 meters, right? So this has a limit of how um, the resolution is brought into place, just so we can guarantee that the performance of your scenarios won't be affected too much by the amount of data that we are bringing in at once in the view. Okay, so you can also turn this color map by quality level over here to see a little color code that shows what is the propagation of the high resolution area, right? So the blue part is the high resolution, and then you just start to decrease as you get away from your selection. Okay, so once we are done with this selection here, I can apply and create my scenario. And once this finishes loading, we have now the context to start working from. Okay, so let's wait for a quick second over there. There you go. So now I don't need to go through the Blender method anymore. There are situations where this is still recommended to use the other method, but I'll talk about them. And this also generates this kind of like overview area of the surroundings up to a certain point. It's not like a full infinite horizon, but it's good enough for you to get some context on the background whenever you're working in your project. Okay, so once you get to this point, there are a couple new things over here on the settings for us to talk about. So we have this extended map display now. And as you can notice, like the option to move from, let me open this. This is the old method, right? With Google Maps. Oh, with Mapbox, sorry. So before we had this option to change your view in the background from map to satellite. So this is not available anymore, at least not in this first version, where like we cannot replace this satellite picture over there, because it's not a satellite picture anymore. It's just like a big 3D shape, right? And in these settings, we can also choose to darken the extent map or and show the map boundary line. So this map boundary line is what I mentioned about being the total workable area. If I look from below, you can see that that's where is my map block. And you can choose to darken whatever is outside of that map so you can focus on a specific location. And you can choose if you want to do this darkening thing, either to turn on or turn off the kind of like the extended map. And you can choose if you want to show that only on the presenting mode, or if you want to see that during site plan and presentation mode. Okay, so you have these options over here to play around, so you can configure like what is going to be your overall scheme of colors and whatnot. Okay, keep in mind that this information is coming from Google Maps. We don't have control on what they send over to us, right? It's a direct connection with their system, so we don't know exactly what's going to be generated over here. So the quality of that area, the availability of the data, and things like that. These are element things that we can't control. Okay, so
Pedro, can I cut you
yep,
off?
yep,
Oh, never mind. Shane might answer it.
cool.
There's a question about not being able to swap the ground image with a new image. I think maybe you can just talk a bit more about that. There's just some limitations currently, right, with projecting a new image on top of the Google Maps
I'll get
2D
there.
image view. Oh, okay.
Yep,
There's a
I'll
question in the
get there.
chat.
Cool. So yeah, so now one of the main aspects of this new method is that you have the ability to create a site condition area. So a site condition area is basically we are replacing the 3D shape that is in that location with a topography shape. So this name site condition is something that might change in the future. So we would like to hear your opinions. Like I'm gonna explain what the feature does today, and let us know in the chat what you think that would be like an intuitive way to call this feature, because we're having some internal debates over here, and we'd like your feedback related to that. Okay, so a site condition area, basically when you are inside of the application, let's say that you're gonna work on this park over here. So there's a lot of vegetation in there and things that you wanna that is in your way, and you wanna clear this up, right? So you can go now and create a site condition, and within this site condition, you're gonna draw a sketch. So I'm gonna draw, let's say, a shape over here that follows along that path, and something like that, very quickly. And when I hit confirm, what will happen at this stage is that this location now will be replaced by what we call a site condition. So as you can see, if I hit done and click somewhere else, that whole area has been replaced by a topography at that location. So there are a lot of things that just happened over here when I created that, and we're gonna go through all of that, right? So just coming back to our presentation here, is that when I create a site condition, at first, that location that I selected gets hidden from all milestones by default. So this is just like the software is replacing that with a topography, and by default, it's hidden from all milestones. But you can connect that to milestones to represent like a moment that you decide to demolish like this, or remove this vegetation, or demolish a building, or something like that, right? So you can do all of that in the platform now as well. So for example, let's say that I want to create a milestone over here that's going to represent the site clearing, something like that, right? And then another milestone for site mobilization, right? So when I do this, I can now go into my project start, and I can connect this site condition here to finish. Instead of like hide from all milestones, I want that object to not be visible anymore after this milestone. So I'm gonna end this object at this milestone, and that means that now I have a state where that object is there. And when I go to the next milestone, site clearing, that object's not there anymore. And of course, you can create a zone or anything, import a drawing, anything to represent that the ground has been replaced, right? Because basically what we are doing here is we're flattening out, replacing this with the topography, but the satellite image that you see over there is the same image that represents the 3D shape. So you will need to create a zone to kind of like represent that area over there has been demolished or anything like that. So I'm gonna do this one quickly here just to represent what I meant. Okay, so zone, that is, let's say, the dirt on the site over there, and this is gonna be connected to the same milestone. So now when I go back and forth, this is replaced by that zone. Okay, so this is what we're gonna be using to create this kind of like demolishing of an area, removing the parts over there, and so on, so you can work with just topography at that location. Okay. When you create these site conditions, it might distort some of the surrounding areas because we have to replace that terrain shape, that location shape, with a terrain shape. However, this new terrain that is added over there, unfortunately, it does not come from the same database as the rest of the models. So like this terrain that you see over here, the topography that we see at this location is not exactly the same topography that we have on the surroundings. So one thing that is very important about this new tool with the Google Maps is that this whole geometry over here is combined into one single shape. So if I haven't created my site condition, I cannot select a specific area and like remove it or something like that. So I cannot select just this building here, for example. I cannot select just one tree, just one car. All of this in this area, this 3D model is combined into one single shape. So we are modifying that shape to make it workable for your projects, right? So this comes from the Google Maps tiles API. So that's the database from Google. When we replace the site condition by the topography, this exact same area over here, unfortunately, doesn't come from the same database as the Google Maps style. It comes from another database called bike path, right? So this is what Google used to track into. That is the database that contains only the shape of the topographies on these locations. So we replace one by the other. And when that happens is like the information might not sync 100%. So as you can see over here, when I did that the site condition, this whole area over here got lifted up a little bit compared to the topography of the streets over here or the surroundings. So if I delete this site condition here, for example, we will see that this topography actually goes down a little bit because it again, it's coming from a different data sets, right? So that being said, when we create this close to like a building or something like that, so let's say, for example, for this area over here, if I create a site condition and to remove just this building over here that is very close and connected to another building, you will get that approximation of the replacement of the topography will affect the surroundings of it a little bit. So again, this is something that we are dealing with right now, and from people that use this tool on the beta stage to compare it to today, it's already better. So like before, as you can see, when I replace this here, there is some distortion happening on the building close by for a couple reasons, right? First of all, we don't have the texture that represents what's going on that interface, right? And also, like this, the closed area might get a little bit distorted depending on the angle and depending on the like how the data is at the source. So that being said, as you can see, like this is a picture from the previous version where the distortion was way more drastic than what it is today. So the distortion over here is like a more like a vertical clean cut. So, but I'm just saying that because you can expect this to affect the surroundings in a way that that might distort that a little bit. If this happens in a way that is impacting your work, what we suggest is that you create another site condition over here to start to approximate these shapes to the area that you're going to be working. So when you create another site condition, that geometry is maintained. So you see how like this changes and creates an opening to show like whatever was there, and I can keep this not hidden from all milestones. So basically, this changes to keep whatever is inside of the site condition more accurate to what was before, right? So that way you can deactivate the hide from all milestone for the areas that you want to keep, and you can maybe push like create this in organize this in a way that it will push that distortion to an area that is not going to affect your work. Okay, so keep checking what Shane is talking about on the chat over there because there is a lot of good information that he's sharing. Cool. So again, site condition is a must for you to replace the areas to something that is just topography. And you can see over here how this impacts the surrounding locations and so on and so forth, right? So we are working on better ways to make this more closer to the other geometry. But at the moment, this is something that might affect your location. And keep in mind that the delta between that topography and the existing one, it changes per location. So like if you choose a location in Brazil, might be the delta might be way like higher than a location in New York, for example. It really depends, you know. So there you go. So the site condition might distort some surrounding areas, and you can create more site conditions to conserve the geometry on specific locations. Okay. Another thing related to site conditions is that if you haven't created a site condition for a specific area, let's say here, for example, there's no site condition over here. Mine, the ones that I created are over there and over here. But if I create an excavation on this area, even though there is no site condition in there, a site condition will be created automatically. So we need that site condition element to be able to create the excavation shapes on that location. So as you can see, there is a new site condition now. There is auto generated and it has the same shape of my excavation. And as you can see, the distortion on the topography happen anyways. So you might want to check like how this is affecting the work that you're doing if you're working with like a very excavation heavy scenario. Okay. And these auto-generated set condition areas, you can double click on them and they are not editable, but you can convert it to become editable so you can sequence them and so on and so forth. So if I convert this now, like you see that this is now becomes a editable shape. Okay, so I can expand this to kind of like propagate and push that distortion of the topography for like for other locations, for example. Okay, cool. I reckon that there are a lot of questions flying around in the chat in the QA. Is there anything that I need to discuss now, Javi? Shane?
Yeah, we got a couple Q&A. Let's go to the Q&A here. Um, First one, am I correct that I saw an upcoming feature called split terrain? If so, what will it be exactly? So maybe you can just talk, maybe you're going to get to it, but splitting the mesh or splitting
So
geometry.
as there is no upcoming feature coming called split terrain, but there is a split tool and there's a custom terrain tool. So the split tool, which is applied to imported models, does not affect this. So this is not an imported beam model. This is by all like, but with the lack of like a easier way to explain, it's all terrain. Let's put it like that. It's all terrain. So if you want to edit the shapes that are generated by the Google Maps, you will either use the excavation tool or the site condition tool to remove those parts and so on, split them in different ways. But the split geometry tool is applied only to imported models, Revit files, FBXs, Navisworks, and all of that. Okay. So if you don't flatten out the area and that excavation, will the volume of mesh be counted as excavation volumes? So excavation volumes, it's always related to the change on the terrain before and after that operation or the milestones. So when I look at this over here, this excavation volume is related to the total shape that was removed on this terrain. So it will include the new topography all the way down to the cut that you created. Okay. Since another
Also,
question
Pedro,
over
on
here.
that note,
Yeah.
you actually have to have the site conditions to be able to do the excavation, right? With
Yeah.
the Google Maps
Yeah.
tool.
It will create the one automatically. And if you remove this over here, like the excavation is going to go away. So since Google Earth satellite imagery every 1 to 3 years, it is possible to do the same. Bring mesh for surrounding buildings from drone import cloud. Of course, you can always bring in like new 3D models to this area, right? So if I wanted to, if there is, for example, if there were like a new building over here that is not shown on this Google 3D models, and I have a drone scan for that, I would simply create a site condition for that area to flatten it out and remove that shape, and then import my 3D model for whatever was scanned and put it over there. Okay, cool. So the last question related to the updates, I will talk about it in the end. Okay, so let's move on over here to a couple of a few considerations related to this, right? So some of these I already talked about, but the geometry is all combined into one single shape. So buildings, vegetation, vehicles, I cannot select them individually, like they are all into one single shape. And if I want to hide them, I can always click over here to hide the earthwork. We're probably going to change this name as well, but this now hides everything. So minus the site condition locations that you created, of course, because they are separated from the rest now. Um, the topography, like I mentioned, changes in the site conditions, right? So there is an area of your site condition that you created that's using the data source from Google Bike Path. There will be a smoothing area and then the original map over here. And the delta varies depending on the location, right? Already showed that, so let's keep that part. The elements are projected onto all geometry. So regardless if it's a site condition or not, when you project objects in cmBuilder now, they will be projected in everything. So let's bring back this guy over here. It's going to be easier to show it. But if I create a zone that can be projected on the ground on this area and hit confirm, and we're going to put in a color over here, you see that this zone just painted that whole area with that color, right? So if even if I hide my site condition, the ground is going to be painted as well. So this projection shows up on top of everything. This is also like something that we would like your feedback to let us know if you would like to have the option or if it would be better that the site condition areas didn't show the projections or not. So it's something that we still don't know exactly what the users will prefer or if ability to switch and whatnot. So let us know what is your preference and we'll like try to adapt that to that as, as good as possible. Okay, so other elements that can be projected as well is lines, labels, all of these you guys already know. But one thing that I also want to bring in the attention to it is are the resources, right? So as you can see, my line over there is being projected um, on top of like the elements and also below it. Okay. So another thing that is important is that the resources are also following the shape. Again, by the lack of for the lack of a better way to explain it, always consider that everything that is created by default from the Google Maps is terrain, right? Like basically terrain. So things that refer to the terrain, like project on terrain and things like that, will also take in consideration the shape of the 3D models here. So if I go and create a fencing in this view, the fencing, when it's projected on the terrain, we try to follow along with the shape of that the Google Maps shape. Okay, and the same apply to the site condition areas as well. So if I go here and do this projection on top of that site condition, oh, actually I was mistaken. The resources are not projected on top of site conditions. That's actually a good thing. So there you go, something that I just learned right now. So the resources are not projected on top of site conditions, just drawings and lines and everything that affects the picture, like the image on the background, because like these zones and drawings and lines, when you project them on the ground, basically they are merged with the image that is on the satellite image over there. So basically those projections will be projected on top of site conditions, but resources from the looks of it will not. Okay, that's actually a good thing. I like the fact that the resources don't follow that. Cool. So moving forward, the 3D data might be out of sync at some locations. So from the team of beta users that was using cmBuilder until Monday, some of them have reported that there are areas in which the 3D model is available on the Google Earth side or Google Map side, but the 3D model is not available in cmBuilder, like when you try to create the model over there. This might happen. Again, it's hard to predict because like there are infinite locations that you guys can select, but this might happen where the data is available on the Google Maps side, but not available on cmBuilder. However, all of the areas that were reported related to this, I checked them today, and they are already available in cmBuilder. So this is something that I think that will get better with time, where like you won't have that discrepancy between what is available on the Google Maps site and what is available on cmBuilder. But one thing to always keep in mind is that I've also, like other users have said, that like, hey, I just created a scenario in cmBuilder and there is no geometry available for that location. Like I don't see my 3D maps. So if I use an example over here of my hometown back in Brazil, where the satellite pictures over there are not like updated at all, you will notice that like if the geometry doesn't exist on the Google Maps model, it won't show up in here in cmBuilder. So if I open that exact location on Google Maps over here, you see that there are no 3D models for buildings and for vegetation or anything like that. There is just one simple model for the overall shape of the terrain. So if this is what is available on the 3D on the Google Maps side, that's what we're going to be able to show up over here in cmBuilder anyways, right? Because the data simply doesn't exist. As you can see over here, right? So the 3D models over there on that area does not exist. Okay. So this is it for this location. Let me open this again and coming back to this. So because of this relationship, this kind of like limitation that we have for the high resolution areas, I would say that the Google Maps integration works for any projects, any size, but it's better suited for the small to medium footprints of your project. But again, it depends on what is the level of accuracy and resolution that you require for your project. Because if you're working with like an airport project that has like a big footprint or things like that, maybe that limit of like 300 meters over here might not encompass the whole area that you need. But like keep in mind that right close to the high resolution area, the 300-meter one, you have like a green one that's going to be like a little lower resolution, but not as bad, not horrible. And then it starts to decrease as far as you go from that high resolution area, right? So you can use the Google Maps model for any projects in like any size, but just keep in mind that it for bigger, larger areas, you might have like a decrease of the resolution when you get outside of the center of your map. Okay, and for other situations that you want to use another data set, the Mapbox and the Blossom option is still available. Our good old fashioned Mapbox over here is still available. You can still use it as and just like the drone scans, you can still import the drone scans. You can still import models from from Blossom. If you usually that would be more suited whenever you need to do a lot more customization on those parts. You will need to edit the buildings in a specific way that you won't be able to do in cmBuilder. Then you can create those models outside of cmBuilder and then import them in. Okay. So just showing now a quick comparison between the Google Maps and the Mapbox method, right? So faster context creation, like the projection of the elements, it's more accurate in terms of like the surroundings. The data set is updated more often than Mapbox. So the Google Maps model, you will see like buildings that in Mapbox, they are not there yet. Even the satellite picture in Mapbox is less updated than the Google Maps version. So this will give you better references and more accurate reference of the surroundings. The custom terrain tool is not available yet for the Google Maps model. So this is important because if you need to work with more accurate representations of your terrain, unfortunately, the custom terrain tool is not available yet, but we are already working on it. Like this, we already have that new tool that I've mentioned before related to the ability to create a simulation between proposed and existing terrain that we are changing our custom terrain tool. You have the ability to create a state of a terrain that is showing the existing one, and you can import a new terrain shows the proposed one, and you will be able to create operations between them. So when we release that tool, this will affect this tool as well, like the Google Maps model, and it will help with the custom terrain on those areas. Okay. For Mapbox, this is what it looks like. And it takes a longer time for you to import the things, the buildings in here and work with the references that you want and so on. So the Google Maps model is way more straightforward related to that. So this is just showing like a little table here to compare those shoes. So like you can use this table to help you understand when you're gonna use which model. For now, I would suggest use Google Maps for every new project that you want, that you have, because right away, if like there are things that are blocking you from moving forward with your project, you will notice, and then you can switch it to Mapbox. But Google Maps is our recommended method for now because the quality of the surroundings is way higher than Mapbox. The context creation speed is way higher than Mapbox, and the updated frequency is higher as well. So there are a couple caveats, right? So the geometry is not separated from the Google Maps, everything's combined. Whereas in Mapbox, you have and your buildings and your terrain are separated, right? So you can delete just the buildings and keep just the terrain and things like that, right? But this is yeah, overall like this is a minor caveat, right? Because we already have the ability to create the site conditions and all of that. Projected elements, again, will be projected on everything, whereas in Mapbox is terrain only. The custom terrain tool is not available yet, for the Mapbox still available. And project size, we got that kind of like limitation related to the resolution that depending on what you're going to use and like how accurate you want to be with your surroundings, you might want to use an imported model from Google, from Blossom. Because let's say that you're going to work on a airport area that you need the same level resolution for like the whole shape of like where you're working at. It's better for you to import a model from Blossom that will have like the same resolution for the whole model compared to cmBuilder direct integration, where you have the higher resolution on a specific location and decreases as you go away from that location. Okay. And the last thing related to our integration here is about switching map data. So a lot of questions that came in this week related to, hey, I have a project created on Mapbox and I want to use the Google Maps integration now. So can I do that? You can, but the best practice is to stick with the same map type from start to the end, so you would avoid some rework. And the reason why is because we are working with two completely different data sets, right? So the Mapbox has a terrain separated from the buildings. The Google Maps has everything combined. And also the shape of the terrain in Mapbox is completely different from the shape of the terrain in Google Maps. Google Maps will be more accurate in terms of elevations of everything compared to Mapbox. But if you already created your project in Mapbox and there are a lot of things positioned according to the terrain, right? Those elements will not adapt like automatically to the Google Maps if you switch it. So like the elements, they're point-based resources like a crane or an office or things that are not connected to the terrain, they won't adapt automatically. So you will need to check the Z coordinates of like basically all the objects just to make sure how different they are from the ground, right? Projected elements as if they are working as intended. So your resources, are they like your now, like before, your fence was going through a clean topography, but now your fence is going to be going above vehicles, might be going above like vegetation, things like that, right? So trees and all of that. So you might need to check your project elements to see how they are, like what is the visuals for them, so you can adapt, right? Review the excavation elevations, especially if you're working with relative elevations, in a way that you brought in a model and you do a custom terrain and you just create like a quick excavation to the elevation of your basement of your model, your slab on grade. But now, when you switch it to the Google Maps model map, your 3D model you're building might have to move up and down a little bit to adapt to that new topography, and your excavation will need to also move up and down to adapt to that, right? So if you have a custom terrain created in the previous method and you change it to the Google Maps method, that custom terrain will not be translated in between one and the other, right? And you will need to create some site conditions to clean the area and review all the topography changes that comes along with it. Okay, so this is just to show that you can still do it. You can still switch, like and update your old projects with the new Google Maps integration, but just keep in mind that you will need to review some of these elements, especially whatever is related to the topography and excavations. Cool, 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 cool. This probably is super interesting because I still have 100 people over here online, and I think that's the most that we had for so long. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So, quick question for the team over there. Like, I haven't been able to check all the chat, but a lot of you have used the Google Maps integration during the beta phase. So let us know how did that go. Like if our team was responding like quickly, if you have feedback about that experience of being added to the beta group and like being able to like get instructions properly and all of that. It was the first time that we did a beta group test like that, and we intend to have more of these for these large kind of like developments. And yeah, so let us know how that went. Okay, did that go? Yeah, okay, cool. Awesome.
Question. Oh,
Yes,
got a question. Got a question.
question.
Ben has a question. Would there ever be a way to sequence multiple work zones in the Google Maps terrain? We'd use that to sequence demolition of building groups.
Yeah, like all the site conditions, you can put them in different dates. Right, so if I start creating a bunch of site conditions over here, I can just like connect them to like different dates to create demolition stages, for example. So let's say this building over here, I want to demolish it in, I don't know, 3 different dates, right? So wing A, wing B, and then this middle part over here. So I can create my site conditions related to that. So site condition 1. Keep in mind that the order that you create the site, something that I forgot to explain, the order that you create the site condition will define the priority of which item of the site condition, like which geometry is placed in which site condition. Like for example, I created this one first, right? So there's part of this part over here is added to the first one, right? But then I will create like a second site condition here that will overlap part of the area with the first one, right? But it won't take that overlapped area to the new site condition. The overlapped area, the area that is the same for both site conditions, will remain on the first one that I created. Okay. And I can go into and do like this third part over here. And if I do demo 1, demo 2, and demo 3, I can now go in and connect all of these guys to their milestones. So I want this to be gone on demo 1, so I need to go to the milestone previous to that, and I will end this guy at this milestone. So when I go to the next one, it's gone, and is it gone? It's going, oh, because it's temporary showing, sorry. But I can go now into this one and say, and you at this milestone, and go to the next one and say, and you at this milestone. So basically, if I go back here to the first date, I can show now this, each one of these being removed at any different points in time.